Hello everyone and welcome to week 4. You're doing a great job so far. I wanted to start this shout out video with some reminders and some new information about what's coming up this week. So this week you guys are going to be writing poetry, and I think that this is very exciting. We're talking about specificity and memory, and I think writing poetry can really help us to access that and to get even more precise in our language. So that's why we're doing it this week. You'll see in 098 that for the poetry unit, there is a video of a professor talking about what poetry is. I think it's very good. He does a great job of talking about how to incorporate the senses into poetry. There's also a discussion in 099 about some poems that are in your English book. And then I also put into the module in 98 some other examples of poetry. So you can see Lucille Clifton reading Won't You Celebrate With Me? And then you can also see the CCP spoken word poets reading their poetry through the Drop the Mic TV program, which is, we've had 6 seasons of it so far, and it's a televised show. It's been nominated for Emmys. It's really wonderful. If you get into poetry, you should definitely try out for it. I was the judge for many, many years. Currently, I'm not a judge. I might go back to being a judge, but it's really great way to hear what CCP students have to say in their poetry. So if you're like thinking, I don't really know how to even start with writing a poem, you can listen to some of that. That's optional. There are lots of different episodes available on YouTube. I just sort of picked one at random, and you can look at that if that's helpful to you. I also wanted to give a shout out to Cassie, who suggested a really, really wonderful extra credit assignment that I have not yet done with students. So this relates specifically to your My Name essays. In my in-person classes, we do a lot of sharing after each unit, usually, of the essays that you've written. So for extra credit, Cassie suggested that we have a way to share essays. So at the end of your week 4 module, it will say upload your My Name essay if you would like the class to be able to look at it. So if you do that, what I'll do is take all of the drafts where you want people to look at it, and I'll put them into a Word document. And then next week, I'll have another activity that will allow people to choose an essay to look at and then to respond to in some way. So, and I believe that I'm going to have the response be just a brief letter to the person who wrote the essay. So I think it could be really fun. If you're pressed for time, don't worry about it. If you're able to do it, please upload it. There's one other detail about it, which is that I'd like you to write 3 themes in your essay at the top of it, sort of like tagging it. So if students need to pick which essay to read, they should be able to see what the themes are before they read the whole thing. So if you're writing about autism, or you're writing about your crazy aunt, or you're writing about a childhood home in the course of your essay, or you're writing about the zodiac sign Aquarius, like whatever you're writing about, just write that at the top of your paper, 3 themes, and then the draft of your essay that you would be willing to have your classmates read. Again, it's totally optional, but I hope that some of you will do it because your essays are great. So not only are you growing in terms of structure and grammar, but you're growing in your ability to share and to sort of wrestle with that vulnerability question. How vulnerable can I be in my writing? How much am I willing to connect with my reader? It's great. So again, many thanks to Cassie, who is willing to share her essay and was the inspiration for this extra credit activity. All right. If you have any questions about that, let me know. It's about 4 points extra credit, so that would go into anywhere that needs it. So let's say like you got a 70 on your final draft, and then you upload your draft to be read by the class, you would wind up with a 74. So, and if you already had 100, I'll just put it elsewhere in your grades. So that's how the extra credit will work for that assignment. Also, it doesn't have to be perfect. You can just send me whatever your final draft was. Fine. I might have made a few extra comments, or you can do yet another draft so that it'll be a little more polished for the class to read it. Totally up to you, and just ignore it if you're having a really busy week. Also, to that end, for some of you who chose not to do the revisions, I did write a note about how to view my comments because I began to become anxious that maybe you didn't know. This happens to me every semester, that I become worried that you didn't know how to access the view feedback, which is why you didn't make the changes. But please do not let that make you think that you need to make the changes on your draft. It's perfectly acceptable to just accept your rubric grade, upload the same thing. Totally fine. Okay, so the reason I do it that way is so that you can make a decision about, how much you want to revise and work on your essay. Totally up to you. But if I did make a comment about that, that's just my own anxiety about wanting to make sure that you know how to see the feedback. Because once I had a student in a creative writing class who got through the whole semester and thought that I was a teacher who would just give one sentence about her work the whole semester. And she was like, why does everybody think that Professor Cadnese gives good feedback? I only get one sentence. So anyway, feedback is coming to you in multiple ways. And if you have any questions about how to access it, let me know. Sometimes there's an error where you'll upload the wrong document accidentally, and I'll mention that to you as well. Okay, so check out that to make sure that you don't need to re-upload the correct document and all those little technical things. Okay, so shout outs. I just wanted to give a general shout out to all of those who could relate to Destiny's essay. I feel like the discussion about that was very deep and that you were responding both to the structure and the challenging question, is 3 paragraphs enough? Some of you said yes, most of you said yes. Some of you gave suggestions about what was confusing or what could be expanded. But a lot of you responded to the emotional content of the piece, and I appreciated that. I thought that was very insightful. And you were talking about how the piece moved you or made you sad, and that's something that you want to think about when you're writing. How do you want to impact your writers? And making your readers sad is not always a bad thing. It's about connecting with them at a human level, and that's a very useful thing to do. So I also wanted to give a shout out to Nasir, who was talking in the questions of the happiness questions, the what happiness is questions, about the relationship between identity and happiness. So Nasir said, even in our day-to-day lives, defending our identity becomes crucial in many areas of our lives. Having an identity keeps us sane, and you could look at the ultimate loss of identity as death. Standing up for what we believe to be right or true often reaffirms our identity, which comforts and reassures us. Being right just feels good. That's the relationship between happiness and identity. So in other words, Nasir was talking about how having to defend our identities and feeling confident in our identities can create a sense of happiness. I liked that answer a lot. It was very insightful. Many different answers to this question. Some of you said there is no relationship and you justified it really well. Others of you said that there is, and then you came up with different ideas for it. So great job with that question. I didn't have a particular answer in mind. Now I just wanted to shout out 3 different aspects of people's My Name essay. So things that were done really well, things that were revised really well, and I could shout out so many more. I'm really glad that we're doing the extra credit so that you'll be able to see others of these essays beyond what I'm able to shout out in this short introduction video. So Lachey did an amazing job of talking about her deceased Aunt Kitty, about how Aunt Kitty named her, and some of the experiences, some of the stories that she heard about Aunt Kitty. So my first time hearing about this, my Aunt Kitty had already passed away. She passed before I was born. I was very sad to hear of her passing because I would have loved to meet my auntie, especially to hear how she helped with my name. My Aunt Kitty was over my parents' house one day eating dinner while deciding what to name me when I entered the world. So first, what I liked about this is first Lachey told the story of her being named, and then she very seamlessly moved into the narrative of Aunt Kitty. So really, really nice. Good job with that. It's a good instruction about how to expand from a small part to like learning more and more about that person. So another person I wanted to shout out is Olivia. And Olivia did a really excellent revision. And this is something that I think many of you are working with and struggling with is structure. So where does a new paragraph start? So Olivia said, in English, Olivia means olive tree. Throughout the Bible, olive trees are symbols of fruitfulness, beauty, and dignity. as an olive branch is also a sign of an offer of peace. That is an interesting fact about my name. I genuinely believe that peace can be the answer to everything, and I like to avoid confrontation at all costs. So, in her first essay, she then went on to say, my name is strong and it carries a lot of history. My name carries a lot of history because it's used in many pieces of literature. It goes back as far as Shakespearean time. So, to begin with, those ideas were grouped in the same paragraph, but in her revision, she separated the sort of different meanings to the name into one paragraph, the introduction, and then the next became a new paragraph about history. So sometimes you have to write it first and then look and say like, hey, where do I want to indent? Where do I want to put my cursor and hit tab? That's technically how you do it. And basically every paragraph that you have is going to be about one theme or idea. So you can have lots of associations, but in your head, you have to have the overall main idea. What's the overall main idea of this paragraph, and when is it time to move to a new paragraph? And I feel that Olivia did a really great job with knowing how to do that in revision. I also wanted to shout out Zamora for a really creative use of attributes to talk about people's names and who they are. So Zamora had different attributes like mighty and strong in her essay. So she said, my grandmother, the woman who birthed my mother, Mighty is her name. She migrated from Jackson, Mississippi, and she left her 13 siblings in the fields behind. Mighty gave birth to 3 girls and 2 boys. Today she watched 2 of her girls die slowly from cancer. She gets up every day with the strength to take care of her 2 boys who suffer from different illnesses. She is strong and mighty like titanium. So not only what she did was to talk about the metaphorical significance behind those people by using names like mighty and strong. It was just very beautiful. And I sort of got the sense of, we're going to read an author called Eudora Welty, and there's that kind of power behind the writing, the idea that the metaphorical significance was woven into each of Zamora's paragraphs in a very beautiful way, kind of like the theme of royalty in Malia, My Daughter. So really nice job with all of this. Again, if you have any questions about anything, let me know. It's helpful to do the 99 work first and then do the 98 work just because there's a discussion about poetry in there. You're also going to be thinking about run-ons and fragments in this module, and then we'll come back to it, as well as doing more with subjects and verbs. So if you need to, remember you can always look back into the previous modules to see the information that you might have missed about a given topic. And you can even just go to Google and type in YouTube Professor Cadenice and then whatever the term is that you want to learn about. So, subjects and verbs, run-ons and fragments, and then you can find the videos that you maybe already watched or some new ones that can help you with it. Another great resource that you have is Khan Academy, Khan Academy, sometimes breaks down topics really nicely. YouTube is a good place to look if you feel like you need a little bit of extra help, or just simply watch the same videos multiple times. I think that reinforcement can be really good, especially if you're trying to undo your perceptions that you've held for a really long time, particularly about grammar points. So I wish you the best of luck this week. Contact me if you need anything. I hope that some of you will take the extra credit opportunities, and I also hope that you have a lot of peace and center this week. And I hope that for all of those of you who are going to be watching, you enjoy the Super Bowl.